fellow travelers, Mark here with Wolters World. Today we're here in Turku, Finland at the Turku Castle behind me. And today we're going to talk about are the don'ts of visiting Turku. And I think I need to start off with this one. Don't think that Turku is not important historically or culturally when it comes to Finland, because this is the former capital of Finland and the city has a great history. But when you walk around, you'll notice there's not a lot of old buildings. There's not a lot of old historic stuff that would make you think that this is the oldest city in Finland. Well, that's because, I'm not gonna lie to you, Turku's had some trouble with fire over the years, and so there's actually ordinances that you're not even supposed to build with fire for a long time now, and so you don't have a lot of those historical buildings because they kind of burned down. And so when you do see some of those wood buildings, you will notice some of the historic stuff. Or you can just come out here to the castle or check out the cathedral. Those are truly historic places that will give you a good history background of the city, and you'll have a better idea of what it really is and its impact it really does have in this country. Because when you go around, you're like, oh, this is the old capital? When I go to other former capitals like in Spain or Portugal, you definitely get an older vibe for it. So that's one other thing I think is important for people to know when they come here. Now, the thing is, when you go around, there's actually a place where you can see the history. Like I said, the cathedral here in the castle, but there's also a place you can go to, you'll see a windmill, and they've actually have like workshops and old buildings that are there to give you that older feel. But just know that it kind of is hidden, the history is hidden here because of the fires that happened. But I will say, if you're going to come here, don't forget to come to the castle. Now, I know a lot of times when you go to castles, sometimes it's just a shell of a castle, or maybe it's just kind of a little, tiny exhibit inside. This is one of those castles you really should go into because it has been redone very well, and they have lots of exhibits in there, a lot of explanation. You get a much better understanding, not just of the castle, but of the city and the region that Turku's in, which is really kind of a great thing to do because you have a much better feel of the city. And one of the things that's important is if you're coming in on the ferry is actually drops you off right behind here. So you're actually right at the castle when you get off your boat. So something to kind of think about when you're here. Another historic place I talked about, go to the cathedral when you're there. And I would say this, don't skip out on a performance at the cathedral, because sometimes they'll have performances at noon on different days of the week, or maybe on the weekend in the evening there'll be something. I've gone there for Christmas programs, I've gone there for music concerts, I've gone there for classical concerts. It really has great acoustics, but it's a really good place to see and take in, and you can visit it during the day, and they have a little museum up in the kind of rafters, I guess you'd say, that's worth checking out. So that's a nice historic thing to do. But I think really what's important, if you want to look at sites to see when it comes to Turku, is don't think that Helsinki has the monopoly on good museums and good art museums when it comes to art in Finland, because here in Turku you have the Turku Art Museum, and if you're not sure about that one, if you're on the Capitol, the main square, and you kind of look away from the river, you see this building that just looks like a fantastic, that's what a museum is supposed to look like. They have a great collection from classical art to more modern art you can see there, so it gives you a nice idea of all kinds of art styles. That's really cool. The I guess the Modern Art Museum, or the Aboa Vetus Ars Nova. Yeah, I know my languages suck today. But that one's really easy to go to because what it is you have the cathedral, and then literally like a block down on the river, boom, it's right there. So that's a really easy one to get to as well. Also, you have the Vino Alten Museum of Art. You can go check that out. And there's also the Maritime Museum, okay? And the Maritime Museum, if you're gonna come down to the castle, you'll see this flower, this big flower statue, okay? And right there's a Maritime Museum with the boats and stuff. And it's actually interesting to go in. I know my kids liked it when we were here and they came and saw it. But I think the next one I have, because I think of that statue, is don't forget to take in all the statues when you're walking up and down the Aura River. So what you need to understand is the Aura River is a very important river in Finnish history, but also for the city, because in the summertime, in the good weather, people flock to the river, and you see people sitting with their friends having drinks. Cafes pop up along the river. I mean, you can rent boats and drive up and down the river on boats. I mean, it's a really fun experience being on the river. But as a tourist, if you're walking from the castle to the cathedral or vice versa, there's statue after statue after statue, and some are more serious. You got the famous runner from Finland on one side, another one you have maybe a Formula One driver, or maybe you have little tiny statues of things that kids look for, or maybe you have a whale tail where water is coming out and there's fountain and stuff, or maybe there's a big flower. I mean, they have so many fun little statues that it kind of is a fun thing to do when you're here. So don't forget to check out the statues when you're walking up and down the river. And I will say don't pass up an evening on the river. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, you can do a boat tour on the river, but I'm just saying sitting out there with your friends talking, maybe having a drink or having one of the cinnamon rolls that are here. They're fantastic, by the way. You have to get those with a coffee. It's wonderful, but something I think is really important for people to do, because that river really comes alive in the summertime. Now, when you are down on the river, you might hear something that doesn't sound quite like Finnish. It sounds like something else. And that is, don't be surprised if you hear a little Swedish when you're here, because for those who don't know, Finland has two official languages. There's Finnish and Swedish. And Turku, or Åbo in Swedish, was the capital of Finland when Sweden was in control. And so you do have like the Åbo Academy, which is one of the schools here. And you will hear little Swedish some places, not a lot, I'm not going to say that, but there is a decent sized Swedish population here. So you might hear that as well. Now, one of the things I think is very nice about Turku is this. Don't expect Helsinki prices when you come here. Now, I'm not going to say Turku's cheap, but in comparison to Helsinki, yes, it is definitely a cheaper place to go, or a less expensive place to go. And even like taking the train, I mean, it's only a 2-hour train ride from Helsinki. I mean, it can be, I mean, don't think this isn't a day trip from Helsinki, or Helsinki is a day trip from Turku, because for the train rides, I mean, they're pretty cheap. The trains are here, they're not bad at all. And it's only 2 hours, so you could take a morning train, get there at like 8 or 9 in the morning at Helsinki, spend your day there, and then take the train back. And I guarantee you will save the money in the hotel costs and the food costs by staying here and doing a day trip to Helsinki. So don't think you're going to get those Helsinki prices here in Turku. Now, one of the things anybody that comes to Finland needs to realize, the Finns love nature. Okay, and so if you get a chance to get out into nature when you're here, do it. The archipelago is right outside here. You can go and visit some of the towns like Naantali, but for me, if you can go out to the islands, the archipelago, and you can rent a cottage and go do sauna there, and then you do the sauna, then you run and jump into the lake or jump into the water. It's one of those fantastic, truly Finnish things you can do. Now, the thing is, though, sometimes you can't get out there because you don't have a boat, or you don't know how to rent a boat. You can, but there's things you can do. But if you really get back to nature, there's actually a national park you can go to, the Kurianaka National Park. I mean, I know I butchered the name, but I'll just say the Nature Natural Park, which is about an hour drive from here. And it's really cool. It's like 300 kilometers of trails that are there. But I will say this, don't go off the trails when you're there, because yes, there might be a bear or a wolf around there. So you do need to be careful. And with 300 kilometers of trails, that's a lot of trails. So you want to be safe. So let people know where you're going to go. So just have a heads up. Now, remember that little town I mentioned, Naantali? That's actually one of the cute little towns that Finns like to go to and visit on the weekends here in Finland. And I will say this, don't think you can't go to Naantali as a day trip, because literally there's a bus you can take from right outside the library, like the fancy, there's a new library, and then there's the old library building that's really nice right on the river, kind of down by the cathedral. And you could get a bus from there that goes straight to Naantali, and they go all day long. So you can get there and come back. It's like, I don't know, 15 kilometers, 12 miles, 10 miles away. It's not far at all. I mean, I had friends that lived and went to school in Naantali, but then they would come hang out with us in Turku, and it was no big deal. But it's this cute little town. You kind of walk around the downtown area and take that in. There's the second oldest church in Finland there, so that's nice. But what's important is when you're by Naantali, you've got to go to, well, I guess I had to put it in the don't form. Don't pass up going to World. World, what's that? Well, you got Pikkumu. When you come to Finland, you'll see all these plushies and stuffed animals, and they look like they're maybe a hippo or something. Yes, Mumi is from here, is from Finland, and they have an amusement park based on it. So you can go there. It's really good for kids, I would say smaller kids to go to, but it's still a fun thing to do. If you just want to buy some Moomin gear, you can go to the mall here in Turku and get your Moomin stuff. So don't worry, you don't have to go out there. But it's something you can do if you're looking for some fun stuff for the kids. Also, there's a water park here you can go to, Yuku Park. So if you're here in the summertime, and I mean, you don't think that like, oh, it's not going to be hot and what are you talking about? I mean, I'm here, I'm getting sunburned because the sun goes for all time. And I will tell you this, don't forget, it's the land of the midnight sun. So you come here in the summertime, I mean, it was still light at 11:45 p.m. last night. And at 3:30 in the morning, the sun was already up again. So make sure you're planning accordingly when you're going to come, because don't think you're going to have a lot of daylight if you come in the winter time. I mean, November, it's dark, it's cold, it's wet, and it's still dark at 10:30 in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon. So just have a heads up for that. Now, one of the best things about Turku is actually it's very walkable. I mean, it's about a 45 minute walk from here, the castle, to the cathedral in town, and it's a beautiful walk along the river. It's no problem at all. And in the wintertime, even if it's snowing and there's bad weather, they actually clear the walkways, so it's very easy to do. But if you're not a walking person, the buses here, don't worry about taking the bus when you're here. There's tons of buses that'll take you wherever you want to go. They're super simple to use and they're super easy to transfer around on. So that is something that will make your life a lot easier. There's a bus that goes straight out to the airport that also goes to the ferry port. So if you're going to be taking a ferry and you come into here, airport bus goes, I think it's number 1, goes to the airport and goes to the harbor, back and forth, and goes to the center of town. It is perfect for travelers, okay? Also, if you're coming here in the summer, don't miss out on the festivals. There's tons of music festivals that go on here, and I'll be honest with you, I lived here for a year, and the difference between being here in the summer and being here any other time of the year, especially in terms of the festivals, is a completely different experience. So you definitely want to come here when there's festivals going on, because the city really comes alive and they do a fantastic job of putting on events. And the thing is, even if you can't come when there's events going on, I mean, if you can just go down to the river, I mean, you'll get that summer vibe when you're there. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to, relive some death metal days, you can always go to the Whiskey Bar, which is the bar I went to for an entire year of my life, and I come back every year and go back there. So, you've got some bar things, and that is true. Another don't for here is don't think you don't have entertainment options, okay? Because Turku is kind of a tourist town for Finland, and so there are tons of bars, there's tons of restaurants, there's tons of clubs, there's tons of things you can go and do. And one of the things that people do is on the river, there's actually like party boats on there where you can actually like have drinks, and it's like almost like a bar restaurant just as a boat. And so that's kind of a fun thing to do. And I really want to reinforce is don't think you can't eat when you are here in Turku, because it's kind of like the self-proclaimed restaurant or food capital of Finland, and there's tons of restaurants. And what I like better about eating here in Turku than I do in Helsinki is actually here it's easier to find real Finnish food. I mean, here there's a little restaurant here in the castle you can go to. I had their salmon soup. It was fantastic. If you want to have your Karelian pies, you can find those here. If you want to have reindeer or meatballs, I mean, you can get the Finnish food when you're here. I mean, you can get international fare too and all kinds of other stuff, but I really feel that Turku does a better job of highlighting Finnish food than any other city in this country. And speaking of food, there's one place you should check out if you're looking for food, is the Kauppahalli, or the market you can go to. It's an indoor market which is open Monday through Saturday. I mean, go in the morning, it's usually a better time to go, but you can go through there, pick up some food, pick up some snacks. I mean, it's a fun thing. I've gone through there a number of times with my mom and the kids, and it's one of those things you really enjoy. It's closed on Sundays, so if you're here on your ferry and it's a weekend thing, that might be a little bit troublesome, but it is a nice thing to do. Okay, another thing you need to think about when you're here is what side of the river are you on when you're walking from the cathedral down to the castle, okay? Because like I said, it's about 3-kilometer walk, so 35-45 minute walk if you're coming, but it'll take longer because you're going to stop, grab an ice cream, or sit at one of the cafes, or just take in the river, and you'll be walking. And I want you to know, if you're going to go and you want to come to the castle side, the castle is not on the side that the cathedral's on, okay? Which you don't think is going to matter, because if you're by the cathedral, you'll see bridge. You're like, what's the big deal? But then all of a sudden, there's no more bridges, and you can't get across. But I got to say, don't worry, because about halfway from the last bridge until the castle, there's actually a little ferry that just goes back and forth across the river. So if you get stuck on the cathedral side and realize I'm in industrial stuff and I see the castle's on the other side, you can get over. So that's kind of a nice thing. So don't worry if you get on the wrong side of the river when you're walking down to the castle, all right? Also, don't forget, when you're walking on the outer river, there's actually boats you can go on and do tours of the boats. There's a couple of them on here you can go see. They're worth seeing just to see how boat life was back in the day. They're not too expensive, so hop on in and check it out when you're here on your walk down from the cathedral down there to the castle over that way. Now, since I'm here by the port, I think it's important I add this note. Don't forget, there are ferries that go over to Stockholm from here, and it's a lot shorter than the ferry going from Helsinki. So if you're going to be here in Finland anyway, in Helsinki, why not come to Turku and then grab your ferry from here to go to Stockholm to continue your Northern European adventure instead of having back to Helsinki? Because honestly, they're cheaper from going from here, and you have just as much fun. Now, I hope this helps you better understand what to do and maybe what not to do when you come here to Turku. I know I loved living here, and I love coming back every few years because it is a wonderful city. What do you want people to do and not do when they come here to Turku? Let us know in the comments below, and I'll say moi moi from here in Turku, Finland.